If you want to significantly grow your podcast audience, get more downloads and more engagement, then there's this one thing you need to do, and it's only one word. If you want to find out what it is, stick around by the end of this episode and you'll figure out how to grow your podcast. Hey, what is going on, everyone? It is Alec Hassan here. I'm at my parents' house, and you're listening to Impact Podcaster Academy. Here, I help podcasters create more impact and income online with their podcast without needing to rely on sponsors or going viral. And in this episode, I really wanted to dive deep into I mentioned it in a whole bunch of episodes, but basically how to grow your podcast, how to get more engagement, how to get more reach out there online. And everyone wants to figure out all these different ways of doing it. They want to do it without putting in the work. And that right there, is the biggest determining factor of how you're going to grow. It's how much work are you willing to put in? Now, obviously, if you put in a whole lot of work in the wrong areas, you're not going to see as much growth as if you put in a lot of work in the right areas. I see it a lot in different podcasting Facebook groups. People are trying to ask for different ways of doing things quicker, more easily. Like one thing is timestamps. That's been a big one that I've been seeing a lot of people ask about. Like, hey, how do I put, how do you do your timestamps for your videos faster? Should I hire someone else to do it? And this and that. And it's like, that's one of those things where it's like, sure, you could put in a lot of work to do these timestamps for your videos, but is that the thing that's going to necessarily be growing it? Like, is everyone who's listening just like, oh gosh, if only this person had timestamps on their podcast, then I'd be listening to it way more. And most of the time, that's one of those things where it's like, no, that's not the case. Like one thing that if I had to give like one piece of advice of where you should put most of your effort into in order to get greater growth for your show, it's going to be the title and then the topic. Because if you figure out the title first, you do your research, you get it. It's a captivating title. It grabs people's attention. It's about a topic that they want to listen to. Then they're going to click on it. If you have a crappy title and no offense here, I'm not trying to be rude or anything like that. But if you have a title that doesn't captivate people's attention, they're not going to click. They're not going to listen. They're not even going to give you a chance to hear what you have to say. But if you have a really clicky title, like something that is like, whoa, creates curiosity, they just want to hear what it is that you got to say for it, drastically increases the likelihood that not only are they going to listen, but they're going to listen to the whole thing. Because if they're not going to click on it, then they're not going to listen. And then if they're not going to listen, then you're not getting any downloads. See what I mean there? But going back to this topic of work and needing to put in more work for your show, 9 times out of 10, when it comes to people who are doing really well with their show and they're getting a lot more engagement, most of the time, to be honest, they're just putting in more work than you. And again, I'm not trying to be rude because this applies to me too. Like I can look at the graph, I can look at the data of my show over time, and I see that like when I'm really putting in more work, when I'm really trying hard to talk with people, with my ideal audience online, and I'm out there and I'm promoting and I'm just simply putting in the work, the downloads go up. And then when I don't do that, when I'm trying to do things kind of like the quicker way, the easier way, then guess what? I don't get as many downloads. And I think where this really stems from is that when it comes to consuming content online, it's very passive. It's a very easy thing to do. We open up our phone, a couple taps on the screen, and then bam, we're consuming content. And because it's so easy to get, it feels, on a subconscious level at least, like it would be easy to create. Easy to consume, we therefore believe it's also easy to create. And that is not the case at all. You know how easy it is to sit down and watch a Marvel movie? You know how easy it is to make those things? Not easy. Not easy at all. And the same is just true with your podcast. It's like there's certain things where it's like, yeah, you don't have to necessarily get like an extremely expensive microphone, because if you have like a good enough microphone, it's going to get the job done. Getting $1,000 microphone, but what you're saying into it isn't engaging, doesn't matter how expensive the microphone is. If you're creating really captivating content, but the title doesn't entice people to click on it, it's not going to make a difference. And then also too, if you're creating all these great things and you got the great titles, but then you're not making the effort to go out there and promote it, then no one's even going to know it exists. There's this saying where you may have heard it before, but it's like, oh, if a tree falls in the woods and no one's around to hear it, doesn't make a sound. I'd say yes, it makes a sound, but no, it doesn't make any noise. Well, what? Those are the same things. It's like, no. You don't have soundy neighbors, you have noisy neighbors. If you're not there and your neighbors are making a lot of noise, you're not there to hear it. You wouldn't say they're being noisy, but when you're there and you are able to hear it, you'd say they're being noisy. They're making lots of sounds, but it's only when you hear it does it turn into noise? Now, I'm not trying to get philosophical here or anything like that, but you got to make noise, which means you got to get your podcast, you got to get your title, you got to get your things out there for people to actually see and for people to actually hear. Because you could be making a lot of sounds, but you're not making any noise. You know what I mean? One of the best ways, again, like if I had to say, like, you know, if you had to put a lot of your work into like one area when it comes to your podcast, it would be the title. And it's not necessarily topic first, because there's titles out there. Like, I created a worksheet. It's 101 captivating content title ideas. And it's all like fill in the blank stuff. Like, I've taken the titles from like top articles, top clicked videos and podcast episodes, compiled it into a list of 101 things, and it's very plug and play. It's like, you know, top 3 things to blank or whatever, and then you would insert your topic in there. But when you start with the title, then you know, okay, I'll tailor the content to that. Because if you do the content first and then you try to do the captivating title, which I'll admit, I do a lot. I do that a lot. I'll get inspired and I'm like, I got to create this episode. And then afterwards, I'm like, how do I make a title that's captivating, that really creates curiosity, that has people want to listen to this topic? And that's much harder. But if you start with the title and then you're like, oh, cool, I'm going to create the content on that, it makes the process a whole lot easier. But at the end of the day, what I really want to emphasize here really quickly in this episode is that you just, most of the time, I'm just being honest, for myself, for a lot of people I've talked with in general, most of the time what we really got to do is just put in more work. Like, it just comes down to that, just putting in more work. Another quick little story example when it comes to putting in more work. The past couple months, I've been doing my hardest to like spend a majority of my time each day in the gym. 31 days in a month, let's say 25 of those days I've hit the gym. Now, I'm not in there 24 hours, but I might be in there for a half an hour, an hour. But a majority of the days out of the month, my goal was to be in the gym. And then you know, now I'm visiting my parents. I'm at my parents' house right now, and I got to see a lot of people who I haven't seen in a while when I moved over to Arizona, and they're like, man, you got some gains. Like, you got really in good shape. Like, what's the trick? What's the secret? And it's like, to be honest, I'm just in the gym more than you are. Like, that's like, to put it bluntly, like, as long as I know I got the right exercises that I'm doing, and for your podcast, for example, it'd be like, you know, what you need to know that you got to do is focus first on the title. As long as I know what workouts I'm going to do, the only thing after that is just to do the workouts. Like, make sure I'm in the gym more than I'm not in the gym each day. If you only went to the gym and worked out 12 times this month, and I've worked out 25 times, I've just essentially doubled the results that you got within the same month. And I didn't do anything differently, except I just put in more work. So, for example, doubling your downloads, how about you try putting in twice the amount of work? How about you try reaching out to twice as many people? How about you try putting in twice as much time to write your title? That might double the results you get. You know, assuming that if whatever you're doing now leads to the results you're getting now, if you double the work that you're putting in, you should expect to get at least double the amount of results that you get. So at the end of the day, tips, tricks, tactics, hacks, cheats, all those different things, it might just be that you got to put in more work, because I guarantee that a lot of people online that you're looking to, if they're not the ones necessarily doing the work, they are hiring people to do that work. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that this episode was able to inspire you. If you want a really good resource, like get you amped up and excited to be able to put in more work, I'd highly recommend listening to the audiobook, the 10X Rule. 10X, you know, Grant Cardone wrote it. Really good. You listen to it and you're like, oh my gosh, I got to put in 10 times the amount of effort that I am right now in order to get the results that I want. And, you know, that right there is just, you know, you feed your brain with that, you're going to want to hit the ground sprinting. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you like this episode, make sure to like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.